This is called Poem Written in the Margin of an Eclipse. A hallway of maps leading nowhere. He left his brothers, Jim, Nick, and Jorge, with the drunken cooks in the parking lot of the pool hall. They were an anthology that leads to bus stations, a flowered urn at the edge of the city. And he wondered after he left if they were arrested for being too cool after 3 a.m., for having too many tattoos, too many blades, cues, and our life is an old school record, an unfinished room, a mattress flopped on the floor, for having too many cheap reservation cartons of cigarettes in their trunks. They are an anthology of train station goodbyes, for having too many lit telephone wires at the same time, for having too many kids at home asleep in their bed of different parents, for counting out their losings from the Derby and their losses from the Pacquiao fight. Tonight, one of them was arrested. He was the kind of man who tried to sleep with your wife and fail, not out of resolve, but because simply he drank too much. Perhaps he was an encyclopedia of submerged cities, for we are the same reason a scene like this that barely exists in American poetry, with its verses about vacations to Mars or Majorca or the lawn at Princeton. For the real poem is always being arrested. Some critic is narking on this one right now, but I say, is it the moon that's in handcuffs? The moon who wears her leather panties. When we paint the moon in leather panties, let them gawk and ponder what we mean. We won't give them a map to decode it. We'll travel towards her through our weeping labyrinths. This is a longer poem. This is the title poem for my new book. It's called Scything Grace. We peed in a cup. In the blue barn, we took off our jeans. Was it then or later when you took off your belt and said, I've demoted the last loop? It was late summer, and we were racing on the back roads. Carcasses of possums and raccoons littered the barbed fences. We fed each other yellow petals as we trespassed the edges of farms and made love under full oak trees. At the edge of the starved fields, no rain for weeks. We drank straight whiskey from glass jars in your father's garage and stole the axe he kept. We chopped down mailboxes and dumped them at the creek. Walt bombed the base. We two-handed a concrete brick through the laundromat glass, the one where the attendant refused to give us change. And what we did, they blamed on gangs of boys. And the haunting voices never stopped, the ones that poked through our skin, the way light perforates aluminum siding on a trailer. We were expired license plates hung on the walls of dropouts. And each week we were asked to stand and pee in a cup. But sometimes, stoned, we kept still, and we were still as a possum waiting for the dread to pass. We fooled our parole officers. We were a blank piece of paper nailed to an official-looking door. I saw trails when I drove, squinting my eyes defiantly at red lights, sucked the lime and spit out the seeds. And Walt, who went like a wind-torn sack of what we lacked to hold us down. And you passed me the tab in the public restroom, the only test you said you ever passed. so we sold our stash. We bought her clothes at Walmart. We bought a tiny pair of boots. We chewed sunflower seeds. We looted carnations from gas stations and twitched ourselves into warm heaps of laundry. You were amaryllis and beautiful braids of blur. We woke up folded like origami cranes. You wore a dress of yellow mums, Queen's Anne's lace in your hair. You were rosewater sweeping in arcs. We were lean and hungry and lost, but we picked ourselves up, but where we walked was worse. We bought her clothes at Walmart and a tiny pair of boots. August, high summer, bombed the base, anyway, the cursed country, terrible, whatever. We were one cigarette that we shared. We walked through cheap apartments. We were lilacs asking rent, the walls like rice paper. Walt wallowed that industrial town, honey with white bread and coffee and chrysanthemums, but we were wilting beside our pancakes in the epic search for who we were. And once again, you were white clematis shaking your tail feather. We were steeped in Johnny Walker red. We flattened white lilies between the pages of books to coronate the dead we were. And then you began to bleed. On the rusty iron loading dock, at a truck stop along I-80. Two stone girls, one in a red tank top around her waist, who took us home and gave us tea. And that's why we understand this history of losing things. Your breath bloomed white peonies, and all was left was the standing vigil of peeing in a cup. Toward that night, she was gone. She was a smudge of memory, a bloody stain written on the mattress, and she follows me, her never name calligraphied by our bruised bodies. This is called Kim Gordon Rips a Bass Line. I don't have any happy poems left, by the way. Kim Gordon is the bass player for this band Sonic Youth. She's like a badass. Kim Gordon rips a bass line as I snort and huff, the mirror glazed with smoke, and some tough chick's lipstick who stumbled in the wrong bathroom and drew the name of her dying brother. Why are people always dying in my poems? Because dying is better than dead. And by dying, they are still alive, at least, in the hospice where I'm sitting by a bed and my friend Charlie is holding on, tied to an IV, bone frail like a small bird. Funny, isn't it? Wasted we see what we do not want and want what we cannot hold. In some punk dive, I stumbled drunk with Corey and Matt. The night rain was black as oil on asphalt. And when we slipped, we slid like when we were kids, when everything was summer. Was it ever? Not for us. With our homemade haircuts. We must resist that lie. And what of Sarah, whose father punched her, eyes black, for a word said wrong? I'd meet her at the dime store. We'd buy bags of penny candy. We'd hike to the quarry and stare down, wanting to dive down into the dark. I know you know someone just like her. And what can you do but listen? As I'm asking you now, because you are old enough or young enough to know that death comes when least expected, the way these words arrived, as if they could save us, scribbled out of smoke and broken jaws. After Szymborska, famous Polish poet. I could not leave the children. Please forgive me your voice for not rushing to the hospital when your brother was sick. Please don't blame me that I've got you correct so seldom, for pulling only a few threads away from the veil. Things could be worse. I swear by the two blonde cleaning ladies we witnessed, smoking and laughing over their mops. Is that your cell phone ringing? Excuse me, did you call? No one's alarm is set for morning. Can I have 3/4 for a cup of coffee? But that's a mirror, a my in the dark, a note to give to runaways in train stations for sleeping through the fluorescent light. Goodbye. I could have kept you company. Goodbye, like the carved names now long grown into men, women working the night shift at the Heinz factory. I walk these empty streets for a sorrow that knows how to tango beneath the bridge. Forgive me for carrying my brown paper bag of bullshit. I was bringing it to an old friend I heard had gone back for rehab. 3 felonies toward a cell a lifetime ago. What I've learned is that memories can be faint, like the glint of starlight or a branch we saw of blackberries by the Iron Works gate. Last one. I swear in this one too. Cover the children's ears. This is the last poem. I wrote this for my friend Corey. He works in a halfway house for really disturbed kids. And he comes home and he gets completely blasted and writes poems. You would too if you worked at a halfway house for disturbed kids. Yeah. This is called Elegy for Myself, written on my 46th birthday. I was really sad when I woke up, so I wrote this poem. Yeah. I'll try not to blow my brains out today. Maybe when I walk outside, I will see a bluebird. And I'll think of Marcus, that 12-year-old black kid with a squinty stutter who spits at the halfway house where C works as a counselor, who blindside tackled C for no good reason except to see him fall, face muddied, grass grained onto his skull. One afternoon it was Marcus crying, see, 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 to see, to see, to be seen. I bet that kid could use that bird. Use that fucking little bird. So I'll draw him a picture with crayons, like when I was Marcus's age, when I had to fight every kid on my block, and my hands were fists so often I forgot my fingers from my knuckles until I found something they could make. So I will make a bluebird and put it in a blue envelope and seal it with my spit and write on it, Marcus. One day, see, you can give him this no-legged, winged thing, and when Marcus sees what's inside, maybe he will sing, which might be enough reason to stick around. What do you think? Though in the end, we both know people like us end up snapping our own fucking wings anyways. Thanks a lot, y'all.